If I can have everybody's attention, we'll go ahead and get this meeting of the Blount County Board of Zoning Appeals to order. Roger, if you'll call the roll, please.
Larry Chesney. Here. Bruce Stamrose absent. Stan Hedrick. Brian King. Here. Rob Walker.
Here. If there's no discussion, there's a motion to approve last month's minutes. All in favor say aye. We got two items on the agenda tonight, one special exception, one variance. Special exception is 1715 Topside Road.
The property is identified on tax map 8, parcel 165.15, and is zoned S suburbanizing. The requested use is for a retail firearms store. The property historically housed a construction company that was grandfathered use. That use has been vacated, has vacated the property, and a new potential tenant is proposing a retail firearms store. This would qualify as a special exception with specific limitations in accordance to section 9.1C below. The property does meet that lot size requirement of 1 acre and is actually 1.2 acres. This is a pre-existing structure, but it does meet the 4,000 square foot maximum footprint for special exception with limitations. As you look at the overhead shot that I provided to you, the narrow portion of the building projecting toward Topside Road, that part of the building has been removed. Parking should not be an issue with the large gravel area around and behind the building. This property is surrounded by commercially used and zoned properties that has been annexed into the city of Alcoa.
Is there anybody here in favor of this special exception that'd like to speak?
Yes, my name is Russell Mahoney. I'm the owner of the...
If you would come up to the microphone so we can hear you a little bit better, please.
Hello, my name is Russell Mahoney, and I am the owner of High Alpha Media, LLC, which is the proposed tenant for 1715 Topside Road. We are an online firearms auction and gun shop, and the facility would primarily be for a fulfillment house for our online gun shop and our online auctions. So there isn't really an intent to be a retail store, a foot traffic retail store. This will primarily just be a fulfillment warehouse for our online auctions and for the gun shop online also. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
We might have some questions for you in a minute. Well, if there's anybody in opposition who would like to speak, we'll open up discussion from the board then.
Roger, clarify why they had to come before this committee.
Because it's zoned suburbanizing, and any commercial use would have to be approved as a special exception. In this particular case, it's historically been used commercially. That use was grandfathered, it's moved out. So the provisions for special exception with limitation does allow other uses to go in there, but it has to go through this process.
I don't believe they've got any questions for you then.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No discussion. Chair will entertain a motion.
Second.
Larry Chesney?
Yes.
Stan Hedrick?
Yes.
Brian King?
Yes.
Rob Walker?
Yes.
Motion approved and passed.
The variance tonight is the side setback requirements at 4,609 Scenic Point Drive.
This is the one that was pulled from previous month's agenda. If you remember that one in Scenic Point. To refresh your memory, they're wanting a variance to go down to a setback of 7.4 feet. They pulled the request last month. Rather than go back through, if you want more background on it, but I did receive some letters that I want to read to you, new information from that since that time. One is from Mr. John Zimmer, who's in the audience. He's also the HOA president. The letter reads, "It has come to the attention of the Scenic Point Subdivision Association that Mr. Lanny Cope has requested a variance from the Blount County Zoning Board for his property at 4609 Scenic Drive, Louisville, Tennessee. The Scenic Point Subdivision Association is opposed to granting this variance. Any side setback less than 12.5 feet is a violation of the subdivision's restrictions. These restrictions were filed with Blount County in 2010. Mr. Cope has been informed of the subdivision's position by email and by registered letter from our attorney. And today I received a email. It says, Mr. Fields, this is BJ and Jeff Knight. We live in Scenic Point neighborhood and serve on the HOA board. We are unable to attend tonight's variance meeting regarding Lanny Cope's request for a variance. We are sending this to let you know that we strongly oppose the request to change the variance not only as a neighborhood, but to uphold the bylaws of our neighborhood. We appreciate your time. Thank you, BJ and Jeff Knight.
Is that all you have, Roger?
Yes.
Is there anyone in favor of this variance who would like to speak? All right.
My name is Lanny Cope. I live at 4609 Scenic Point Drive, Louisville, Tennessee. And I am requesting a 2.6-foot variance on the side yard setback in order, on the south side of my property, in order to expand my master bedroom suite so my wife can have a closet. When we first began to look at this, I visited with Roger Fields and shared with him the survey of my property that shows the 12.5-foot building setback that the subdivision regs call for. He informed me that Knox County regs were only 10 feet. I'm sorry, Blount County, pardon me. We've had this property for about 10 years, but we just moved here permanently about a year ago. And so we sold our house in Knoxville where we came from, and now we're trying to get all our stuff in it. So that's the purpose of it. I visited with my neighbors on both sides, both the north and south side of the property. They have no opposition to this addition or the encroachment on the side yard setback. And I think that's been verified by Mr. Page. It's in the meeting minutes of the Subdivision Association. I went to the Subdivision Association of my own free will to ask them for a variance before doing this. So everything was out on the table and above board. In the meeting, actually when I called Mr. Page to set the meeting up, I told him that Pam Jones, who is my neighbor on the south, which would be the one most affected by this, that I'd spoken with her. She had no opposition to it. He called her and verified that, and that is in the written meeting minutes of the Subdivision Association, that there is no opposition. Where I am talking about adding this on is Ms. Jones can't even see it from her house. And I have photographs here that will show that. If I could approach the...
Yes.
Starting with this photograph, this is a photograph from my front yard looking back to the edge of the house. Right in here is where I'm talking about adding the addition. And then as we get closer and closer, you will begin to see my firewood. And beyond that, a blank wall. That is the garage of Miss Jones' detached garage. See if I can get a better picture. Here we go. Her house is on the other side of that garage. You can see, you can't see it from here.
When you look at your house, and on the right side, you have a part of your lawn that's clear, and then you come to an area that's just overgrown. Where's your property line compared to where your lawn is mowed and that overgrown area at the beginning?
Yeah, it's my belief that it's a couple of feet into the overgrown area.
So you actually own part of the overgrown area.
I believe that's true.
And then this other garage that's in this overgrown area is do you know how far it is off the property line?
I'd say it's probably 15 or 20 feet.
Is it? Okay.
And that's a picture of it, but you can see it better. There's two pictures of the garage, looking across the top of the firewood. Okay, and finally, if you'll look right here, it's really hard to see. That's her house. That's her actual house. It's about 75 to 100 feet off of this property line. We don't believe that we're damaging.
Mr. Cope? Where's the rest of these? No, I don't believe so.
We don't believe that we're damaging our neighbor's property in any way. She has not resisted. In fact, she has endorsed it. We're not setting any precedent here. There are already violators in this neighborhood of setbacks that are significantly more than 2.6 feet. And I'm not interested in getting any of my neighbors in trouble, but this doesn't set any precedents at all. The neighbor can't see it. The board's attorney, what I did when I went to the board was I asked them for a variance, just like I'm asking you for a variance. And there was a good bit of discussion. The board was not unanimous in their opinions, even though their written opinion is unanimous. And I understand that because I sit on boards too. What the attorney said was they don't have any authority to issue a variance, but they have they're supposed to uphold the rules. And I understand that. And if I was damaging anyone in any way, I would not pursue this. But I don't believe that I am, and I don't believe that I'm setting any precedents that causes someone else to be able to use this to do something other than what the written rule is. So I'm asking for a 2.6 foot variance. You say, why 2.6 feet? Okay, sounds kind of arbitrary, I know. I've got 22.4 feet from the corner, the front corner that I showed you the picture of my existing house to the property line. Okay. On that side of the house, I also have a chimney that is about 8 feet long and 2 feet 3 inches thick. Okay. So I'm trying to put a 15-foot addition onto my house to become the master bedroom and turn the existing master bedroom into a big walk-in closet. The 15 feet is because my house, as you saw, has a stone veneer on it. So when you put the stone veneer and the thickness of the wall, it takes up about a foot. So that leaves me 14 feet from in the space. I take out the other 2 feet for the chimney. Now I'm down to 12 feet. If I don't get this other 2.5 feet, I'll have a bedroom that's 10 feet wide, which means I can't put furniture on both walls because the bed takes up the whole space. So I know that's a long explanation of why it needs to be a 15-foot addition, but that's the reasoning. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We might have some questions for you shortly.
Okay.
Is there anyone else in favor of this variance? Is there anyone in opposition? One at a time, please.
Well, good evening. I'm Gerald Page, and I am here representing the Homeowners Association. I am the president of the association currently. John Zimmer is the secretary of the association now, just so we're clear on that. The way Mr. Cope presented his case is factual. He did approach the board with his request for the variance. We did grant him an audience so he could present his case to us. He did, in fact, talk to Ms. Jones, his neighbor. I did follow up with Ms. Jones and heard it from her mouth that she has no problems with this variance request. A couple of points I'm going to disagree with Mr. Cope on. It says this does not present a precedent. Actually, it does. There are a couple of people in the neighborhood who have violated these restrictions, but they did not go through the proper channels through the association to request a variance. Had they done that, I'm quite confident they would have been turned down. For the reason that Mr. Cope outlined, that our attorney, when Lanny brought us this request, we wanted to be reasonable about it. Lanny's a good neighbor, and so we we heard his request and got to thinking about it. We said, well, do we even have the authority to grant or deny such a request? So at that point, we did, in fact, decide to get the opinion of our attorney, Mr. John T. MacArthur of Kaiser & Black. He did write us a letter back giving his opinion, said, no, you really do not even have that authority. What you are bound to do is uphold your restrictions that were written and put into place and voted on by the membership at large and approved in the year 2010. Those restrictions are in place until the year 2020. We're not allowed to change them any earlier than 10 years. So we do have the letter I have a copy of the letter that Mr. MacArthur wrote to the Copes very clearly, I think professionally, but clearly stating that I have advised the board they do not have the authority to grant such a variance. Should any property owners violate or attempt to violate any of the covenants, the association has the right to prosecute any such violations. And should the association decline to do so, any person owning property situated in Scenic Point subdivision whose property is significantly affected by the violation may prosecute any proceedings against the violator. So, since 2010, I've spoken to the past three presidents of the association. Nobody has approached the association board of directors to request a variance before. So basically, a couple of end runs were done, and we do have a couple of violators in the neighborhood. However, the association's position is that when we violate these setbacks, either front or side or rear, that it does have a detrimental effect on the visual aesthetic of the neighborhood. We do have homeowners that have significant investments in the neighborhood, and we want to maintain that visual integrity. So, I don't think I missed anything, did I?
The doghouse.
Well, yeah, well, there was something, discussion, Mr. Cope has already erected a structure. He's calling it a doghouse that is closer than our setback, but that was done before this board came to be, so I don't really think that has much of a play in tonight's discussion. So, at any rate, our restrictions do very clearly say that No new residence, dwelling, or other permissible structure constructed hereafter shall be constructed closer than 30 feet from the front line, 12.5 feet from any sideline, or 20 feet from the rear line, unless a lesser distance is allowed by virtue of a variance procedure from Blount County, Tennessee. So while Mr. Cope is asking for a 2.6-foot variance from Blount County's restrictions, he's actually asking for a 5.1-foot variance from the Scenic Point Homeowners Association restrictions. And, you know, as our attorney has advised us, the board is bound to uphold our restrictions, and that's our position. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Sure.
What happened to the two violators that violated the restrictions?
We haven't really taken any action against those people. Basically, what our option is, once a violation occurs, we can incur the expense of retaining an attorney to either try to get an injunction against the procedure before it starts, or to have the violators actually dismantle their construction and rebuild in accordance with the violation, with the restrictions. We've opted not to take those extreme measures.
Are you going to do anything about it?
No, I don't think that we will. Again, Scenic Point is a very good neighborhood. We're friends, you know, we have nothing personal against the Copes. What we're trying to do is uphold the restrictions that were written in 2010. These violations, again, they either occurred before 2010 or an end run was done around the board, and I don't think with any malice or of intent. People just knew they needed to get a variance, and they came to Blount County and they got one before they came through the association. I think it was done harmlessly, you know, without any real forethought of trying, intentionally violating our restrictions.
I have a question for you.
Okay?
Mr. Cope, come before the board to get a variance, doesn't say anything at all to you guys where you at right now. Instead of approaching you in the way that he did, being upfront and forthcoming, he says, you know what, I'm gonna go to Blount County and see what I can do there, and, you know, not even worry with the HOA. He tends to lead me to believe that he's trying to be a good neighbor when he tried to come into you guys and say, hey, this is what I'd like to do, you know, can we work together? Where would we be right now had he done that and not even approached you guys? What would you do?
Well, honestly, the state of things today is we've had a number of people who have done construction projects. As a matter of fact, Jeff and BJ Knight, who sent you the email, they put a significant addition to their house, and their next door neighbor, who is with us here tonight, Jim Thomas, was out at their construction site with a tape measure, making sure that they were not in violation. So we're not being harsh about things. I think our association restrictions are really quite lenient. However, what we do with the current board, we expect to uphold those restrictions. So had Lanny just begun construction, I'm sure there would have been somebody out there with a tape measure, and we would have stopped him before things got too far along.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? Is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
I'm John Zimmer. I'm the secretary for the association. One of the things that my concern is that this isn't just about Lanny's house. It's about 66 other members of the association, where if you set this precedent, it'll impact them. I did a little research, and one of the questions in the prior meeting was about the garage next to it. That was built before we had restrictions. And a lot of the things that are perceived to be precedents were grandfathered in due to when the restrictions were done. We had restrictions in 1997, 2000, and 2010. Also, I have an email from another resident that expresses their opinion. Can I read that, or? It's from Judy and Lee Bazin. John, Judy and I want to let it be known that we are against changing the Scenic Point subdivision variances for property lines, setbacks, etc. We believe this sets a bad precedent. We want to voice our opinion as to no on this matter. We want Scenic Point board members to enforce the rules as written. So, any questions?
Not at this time, I don't believe. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Mr. Crow, I failed to answer your question correctly. There was actually an instance about 4 or 5 years ago where the house directly across the street from my home was constructed, and it did not meet our minimum square footage requirement of 1,600 square feet. That homeowner, in order to comply, was asked to and did, because he's a good neighbor. He enclosed an outdoor porch to ensure that his home did meet the 1,600 square foot requirement. But he was approached and told that litigation would ensue. And I think, as a matter of fact, we did spend about $3,000 on an attorney to make sure that that home was not considered completed and occupied until it met our restrictions.
My thought was, is if you've got the restrictions and all, but you're not going to do anything to enforce them, why have them? But if you're enforcing them, that's...
Yeah, and your point's well made, and we really are, you know, we take this very seriously, and we do want to make sure that with these restrictions that were voted on by the entire community and approved are enforced. All right,
Thank you. Is there anyone else in opposition who'd like to speak? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor to discussion from the board.
I'm Terry Zimmer. I'm also on the Scenic Point Board. And I feel that representing the board or representing the homeowners, one of their concerns is if we don't uphold our restrictions, why do we have restrictions in our neighborhood? That's what I'm hearing from my neighbors, is a concern that being this, if this goes through as planned, that anybody can do anything to their home because there's no recourse. That's the concern from the neighbors that I'm hearing. Okay?
Thank you. We'll open up the floor for discussion from the board then. Oh, yes, sir.
I think I'm just more or less reinforcing what she had to say. But we're proud of our neighborhood.
Could you tell your name, please, sir?
Can you hear me now?
Could you tell us your name, please, sir, for the record?
I don't hear very well. I'm not sure.
Your name?
Oh, James Thomas. Okay. But we're proud of our neighborhood, and we're trying to preserve it, what we have. You know, do we come in to build condominiums next time? I mean, that's against our bylaws, but if we're, you know what I'm talking about, we don't need to start changing our bylaws. And that's what they're trying to do. And that's the way I'm looking at it anyway. And I started saying, we was talking about, Bunny came in, and he was building something down there. He was asking me, he said, I'm just building a doghouse. Well, I'm not sure what that dog is, but it's 2-story. I started saying, my wife would like one sometimes for me to get in, I guess. But he had it built. You know what I'm talking about? We were nice enough not to tell him to take it down, try to get him to take it down. But we don't need that in a neighborhood. We've got a wonderful neighborhood and wonderful people. And why destroy it?
Well, our county stipulations aren't as stringent as your homeowners association. Our setback requirements are 10 feet, and yours are 12. So
Yes.
a lot of this is
But
probably
he's wanting to
for
take
you
it
all
to
to
less than
enforce.
that. So, you know, thank you and appreciate y'all's help.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I'm Barry Davis, 4836 Scenic Point Channel, and I'm a past president. I just really want to clarify a couple of things. The incident that Jerry was talking about with the minimum square footage, that actually took some strong letters from the attorney to get that compliant. It wasn't quite so the board has taken action in the past. One of the two violations, when they mentioned two violations, one of those is a violation of our 12, but not your 10. And that was done without anybody's knowledge. And so the other violation, I'm really not sure of what that is, but we've tried recently, especially to enforce those restrictions. And within the restrictions, we keep referring to the 2010 and the different modifications. The setbacks have been in place for a long time. And the grandfathered ones that are mentioned are from the early 70s, I think is when this subdivision started. And it's a mix of older houses and renovations, additions, and new houses. So anyway, that, just a little factual.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? We'll open up the floor to discussion from the board then.
My concern is that the homeowner who's asking for this variance has a very neat place, looks very nice. And the side that he's going to add on to, I don't see that it would impact the neighborhood at all when you compare the way the two properties are maintained. So from an outsider looking in, I don't see this being a negative to the community. I thought that if we gave a variance, that we did not override the homeowners association. I thought they still rank over us. Although we can give a variance for Blount County, they still have the right to not do that. And ours doesn't set a precedent that says they have to. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, they are by no means
They're not bound
one
to
and
do
the same. Correct.
Right.
I mean, even if he built to meet our setbacks, it would still have issue with their setbacks.
Right. Now, I have a total respect for Kaiser and Black and their attorney. I don't understand how we as a board can't grant a variance and they can't grant a variance. That, as a non-attorney, that doesn't make sense to me, but I guess I defer to their attorney. I'm not sure why you need an HOA committee if they can't grant a variance. So my concern is from a county point of view and what we've done for other homeowners, I don't see that this is an irresponsible request. So that's my.
We got a 10-foot side setback. Is he asking for 7.5-foot setback?
7.4 feet.
Yes, he's wanting to go 2 feet, 2.5 feet in.
Into the county still.
Right.
Is there any other discussion?
Let me just read something as far as this board's ability to grant or deny variances real quick. Just, I know I've given it to y'all, just I kind of want to read it. It's section 11.6F. And the board shall limit granting variances to the minimum needed to overcome hardships or difficulties based only on the following criteria. The hardship or difficulty is present by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a piece of property existing at the time of enactment of this resolution and amended and any relevant amendment thereof. The hardship or difficulty is present by reason of exceptional topographic condition of a specific piece of property. Those two don't apply here. The hardship or difficulty is present by reason of other extraordinary or exceptional situation or condition of a specific piece of property. That one I circled because I think that's the one you could, there might be some legitimacy there because it's an existing house on a property. The strict applications of the regulations would result in a substantial loss of value of land, such substantial loss of value being considered in this resolution as an extraordinary exceptional condition of a specific piece of property, provided that a small reduction of value shall not be considered as a valid basis for granting variance. I don't think that one's applicable. The hardship or difficulty is not the result of or created by the actions of the applicant. He's not started, he's come beforehand, so that one's not really applicable. It also gives us reasons why we can deny a variance, and that's in the following section G. Notwithstanding findings under subsections F above, the board may deny the application for variance if it finds and concludes, based on the information submitted in the application or provided at the hearing, that one or more of the following condition holds or will hold. Granting the variance will materially endanger the public health or safety. Granting of the variance will substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or the granting of variance will not be in conformity with the purposes, intents, or goals of this resolution. So that's our guidelines for granting a variance.
I got a question. How long does Mr. Cope live down there? How long have you owned that property?
Roughly 10 years. 12, okay.
So you knew it when you bought into it, the restrictions?
I didn't actually look into them, but I'm not going to deny that. You know, when I began to plan this addition, I pulled out the plat that was in my purchase papers, and that's when I discovered the 12.5-foot building line from the. It was showing right, and in fact, it was listed as a building line. And when I went to visit it with Roger Fields, he validated that the Blount County zoning was a 10-foot. That was a subdivision restriction or covenant, and that's when I approached the subdivision group. So while I had the paper in my hand when I bought the house, I did not think forward enough that I was going to have to add on to it. We bought the house we bought the house originally as a second home. And we stayed in our home in Knoxville until our children graduated from college. And then we moved out there permanently. And when we moved out there permanently, we put our house in Knoxville on the market. It sold in June of this year. And all of a sudden, we got all these clothes and furniture that we don't have any place to put. So that's the long and short of the story.
You know, Roger, I don't think we've been in a situation before where we've had subdivision regulations with setbacks that were greater than what Blount County has had.
I agree with you. I don't think we've seen that.
So this is a situation where if they have a greater requirement than we have, why do we want to jump into it and create more of a situation? I'll make a move when the time comes.
I have a question. When was the 12.5 setback established? What year?
That was established, well, let me get my papers. The oldest restrictions I could find with the first set was 1977, and it was 12.5 feet in that all the way around all four sides. And that has since been modified.
Who modified? Homeowners?
Yeah, every 10 years we get to
Why
redo
was
the,
it modified? Why was you not happy with what you had? Why?
well, as I said, at 77, it was 12 and a half feet on all four sides of the house. Then it went to 30 feet front and back, and 12 and a half on the sides.
So it's always been 12 and a half on the side?
It's always been 12 and a half for the sides, yes.
Is there any other discussion from the board? Stan, you ready to make a move?
I make a motion that would approve it, provided that if they can get the homeowners association to grant them one from the homeowners, then go for it. But if the homeowners don't approve it, I'd make a move with grant it based on the homeowners approving it also.
I second.
Okay.
Is there a question?
Written interpretation by the homeowners association attorney is that they don't have the authority to grant variances. That's in writing.
Yeah, well, that's
one attorney.
that's the problem.
But if you go ahead with this, you'll be in violation.
Well, they're not suing the guy that's way in violation of the 30-foot front setback.
Well,
Way in violation.
6 inches.
Well, this keeps us out in the middle of it.
yeah.
Let's make sure we understand. What we're voting on is we're granting it as far as the county's concerned, but the homeowner still has the priority.
I got the motion is to approve the request based on homeowners approving a variance along with it. Larry Chestnut,
Yes.
Stan Hedrick,
Yes?
Brian King,
Yes.
Rob Walker.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Good luck. Hope y'all can get something worked out. Roger, do we have any other business tonight?
No, just wanted to remind anybody that needed training
Yeah.
that TikTok. Merry Christmas.
Is there a motion to adjourn?